A very warm welcome to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. I'm Ritwika Gupta. The 20th Conference of the Parties to the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change, or better known as COP28, is coming to a close. And on the sidelines, I caught up with Vineet Mittal, Chairman Avaada Group, to talk about some of the biggest conversations happening around green energy and the emerging trends that have the potential to impact India's renewable energy sector. I'll be in conversation with Amit Sood, Director Google Arts and Culture, to deep dive into India's art and creative economy and the potential for businesses in this sector. Thank you so much, Mr. Mittal, for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow.
Thank you for hosting me on ET Now.
So, this is going to be part of our year-ender series, talking about green energy and much more. But to begin with, let's talk about the big picture. India's energy capacity crossed the 125 gigawatt mark in March 2023 and also saw significant milestones this year. So give us an overview of how the past year, 2023, has been for India's renewable energy sector, and really, where does India stand today?
As you rightly said, 2023 has been a remarkable year for India's energy sector. We have added 132 gigawatt of solar, wind and other renewable energy sources now. And India is expected to complete around 140 gigawatt by March 2024. So if you look at this has not only set up the benchmark for India, but across the globe, India is known for its decarbonization program because of rapid intervention which we are making in the renewable energy space.
So Vineet, you are currently at COP28. Tell us what are some of the biggest conversations happening around green energy in terms of significant ideas, and green energy policies. Any shifts from last year's COP to this year's event?
At COPs, the focus is on actionable green energy policy, except from the previous COPs, where it was all about targets, but this time it's also about implementation. The world has agreed to triple its renewable capacity by 2030, and there is a lot of excitement about this. At the same time, there are skeptics who are saying that how the world will triple the renewable capacity in 7 years tenure. So it's seen with the cautious optimism, and being in this sector, we are quite excited about it.
So what, according to you, are the emerging trends that have the potential to really shake up India's renewable energy sector?
So if you look at emerging trends in the last few years, India has moved progressively towards not only decarbonizing its grid, but decarbonization its industrial sector and mobility as well. So we are seeing a huge drive towards EV, huge drive towards green hydrogen and its variant. And Indian government has come out with a policy about the same early this year. So we are seeing a lot of investment would be attracted into this sector. In addition to that, decentralized solar generation, rooftop, Kusum scheme, and many states are coming out with its own policy where they are able to provide you land and evacuation close by to do the decentralized small grid connection. We are also seeing solar being used to move the farmer loads from the night to the day, which will be a great game changer.
So our show Leaders of Tomorrow, it caters to a lot of MSMEs and smaller entrepreneurs. Tell us, Vineet, how MSMEs can play a crucial role in championing renewables. How do you see opportunities for smaller businesses in India's energy sector, and what role can they play in really advancing India's energy goals?
No sector can succeed without a very active participation of MSME sector. As you know that India is planning to invest around $1 trillion over next decade in decarbonizing its grid and industrial sector. So there is a humongous opportunity across the value chain for MSME sector. The key is to become bold and take a strong decision to expand the capacity. We are seeing many times that some things which can be delivered in 1 or 2 months is taking longer to deliver when you are going to the MSME sector. So we there is an opportunity all across the whole supply chain of green energy, and the timing couldn't be better. So I would encourage your viewer and investors and entrepreneurs in MSME sector.
So, clean hydrogen is also gaining prominence in the global energy landscape. Tell us, how do you see its significance in scaling global financing, and what role can it play in India's pursuit of its green objectives?
So green hydrogen is like a Sanjeevani booty for decarbonized hard to abate sector. So it's a great step towards solving the energy requirement of industry, and many process industry which earlier thought that they cannot be decarbonized. Now they know that they can be decarbonized, and the technology and solution
Right.
for the same exists. So there is a huge euphoria about green hydrogen, green methanol, and green ammonia across the world. We are seeing sectors right from marine transport, shipping, to steel, aluminum, copper, cement industry, fertilizer industry, city gas. So across the value chain of industrial sector, there is an opportunity to decarbonize it using green hydrogen and its variant. And the investor are also quite excited about this sector. And we are seeing almost an announcement of one or two investment every week in the green hydrogen space across the world. So
Sure.
it's one of the greatest opportunity, like solar was in early days of 2010 and 2011. Green hydrogen is at the similar stage now, but it has tremendous potential.
Now, India has set an ambitious target of 5 million tons of hydrogen generation capacity by 2030. Tell us what, in your opinion, needs to be done to achieve this target, and what challenges might the country face?
India's eco-friendly growth and infrastructure development are transforming the entire supply chain. EPC company, equipment manufacturer play a crucial role in implementing sustainable practices and fostering innovations. So right from scope 1, 2 and 3, the more and more awareness is coming in the industry because of strong focus by government, by NGOs, by developers, and we see this will have huge positive impact towards meeting India's net zero target, as well as individual companies' decarbonization plan. So, from the perspective of renewable energy company, it's going to make our supply chain more and more accountable to do responsible manufacturing, responsible transport, etc. So it's the right thing to do.
You mentioned earlier that achieving the 2030 target requires an investment of nearly $1 trillion. Um, can you shed light on Avaada's plans to contribute to this goal, including your strategies for, elevating operational renewable energy capacity?
Avaada is a fully integrated energy company, and our strategy is to become convert the sand into green molecule. So that means that we will convert silicon into ingot, to wafer, wafer to cell, cell to module, and use those solar panel and wind machine and hydro to create round the clock green power, and use that green power to make green methanol and green ammonia. So Avaada is targeting 30 gigawatt solar equivalent of green energy projects by 2030. We are already participating in many of the government tenders uh, awarded by central government
Right.
as well as the state government. We recently won India's single largest project of 1 gigawatt AC awarded by NHPC, and we continue to participate in various opportunity across the value chain to meet our aspiration and goal.
Finally, in the context of India's goal to produce 50% of its power through renewable energy sources by 2030, tell us, how does Avaada envision playing a pivotal role, and what measures are in place to align with this ambitious national objective?
So India has taken a very ambitious target of decarbonizing by 50% by 2030. And to make it successful, they have come out with a yearly plan, quarterly plan, and 5 yearly plan on achieving those. So that means they are coming out with tenders to make their generation green. They are setting up a lot of transmission line to make sure that when these projects are ready, they can be evacuated. And they are working with the financial institutions to make sure good projects attract the debt and equity financing. So we are seeing an overall comprehensive approach by government to make their vision real. And Avaada is fully committed and aligned with the government's vision of reducing the emission by 45% and having 50% energy coming from green sources. We are committed to help government of India achieve it. We are continuously innovating and investing in this sector. We are participating in big bids done by state government, SECI, NHPC, NTPC, etc. And we are quite optimistic that Avaada would contribute 30 gigawatt in this greening journey of Government of India.
Well, it was lovely chatting with you, Vineet. Thank you so much for joining us today on Leaders of Tomorrow. Welcome back to IDFC First Bank presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11, in conversation with Amit Sood, Director Google Arts and Culture, on India's arts sector and the potential for businesses in this industry. Amit, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
So to begin with, can you share the origin story of Google Arts and Culture? I believe it started off as Google Art Project back in 2010. Tell us, what was the initial idea behind it?
Yes, of course. So obviously, thank you for having me today. And to tell you a little bit about Google Arts and Culture, it's a project that I started with a few colleagues here at Google around 11 years ago now or so.
Right.
And essentially, the idea at that time with the art project was to essentially give access. I mean, it was very closely tied to the company's overall mission of democratization and accessibility. And at that time, we thought one of the most inaccessible, pieces of culture was really art, getting people to have art at their fingertips without many barriers, a frictionless experience. And so that was really the genesis, to start with art. And then very quickly, we realized that art is just one very, very small but important piece of a larger cultural storytelling narrative that we as Google Arts and Culture want to focus on.
Amit, if you can talk about the decade-long journey of Google Arts and Culture in India, what can you tell us about that?
Well, I think our journey in India has been so, let's say, rewarding personally for me, purely because of the partners that we've had on the ground. And when we started in India, obviously we started with working with the NGMA, the National Museum, focusing on art primarily. But very quickly we saw such a demand and such a passion from our partners to tell stories about crafts in India, to talk about the work we've done with unheard stories about women contribution in culture, or for example the storytelling we are seeing from private organizations like the Museum of Art and Photography in Bangalore. So this journey is kind of more of us going and putting the technology in our partners' hands. And then the partners telling us that, okay, you need to tell stories about X, Y, Z. Personally, I think what has really made me very proud, but also very happy, is that our India portfolio in Google Arts and Culture is extremely diverse. I mean, one of my favorite projects that we did, it's ironic that it would be, one I would mention, but honestly, it means a lot to me, is a project we did on the importance of railways in India and the emotional connection that people have with the rail journey and understanding those rail journeys, understanding the people behind them, the stories that come out from them. So it's got everything, it's got railways, it's got crafts, it's got art, it's got a little bit of food, and we are going to be doing more and more.
So in today's predominantly commercial world, Amit, how do you perceive the significance of art and culture?
Well, I've ended up, not by design, but I've ended up spending the last 11 years of my life focusing on, arts and culture and I think one of the reasons I'm doing that, and a lot of people in my team are doing this, is because we do feel that the commercial world needs to exist. It's very important because that's how art and culture can also thrive. But there is also an aspect that I think is even more important in this world now, which is this non-commercial aspect of archival preservation, storytelling, and essentially allowing people to get access to these important artifacts and these important ideas, not just for purposes of inspiration, but also for purposes of education, for learning, and so informal learning, right? And there's so much of informal learning that takes place. So I think, in a highly commercial environment, it is even more important for this connection with archives. And I think the fact, if you look at the incredible success of YouTube as a storytelling platform in India. It's exactly, there's so much demand for stories. And what we have started doing is, capturing those stories in a much more, archival, long form manner so that they can accompany the YouTube experience that people are already participating in.
Absolutely. Amit, our show Leaders of Tomorrow is about entrepreneurship and smaller businesses. Give us an overview of the landscape for smaller businesses within India's arts sector, and what role do they play in shaping the cultural and entrepreneurial tapestry of the country?
Well, I think, they play probably, a pivotal role, especially with the, convergence of access and technology. Because I think, when you have a very, India has quite a fragmented, arts and cultural, let's say, ecosystem. You have various different players depending on what kind of art form you're looking at. And I think small organizations, they are going to be quite instrumental in essentially bringing out those stories that are very not just regional and not just specific to where they are, but also to bridge those gaps between those different, let's say, different types of cultural sectors. So whether, for example, if you have an organization that's focusing on music and storytelling through music, how can that organization partner with smaller organizations that are focusing on photography? Because there are connections there. So I believe that this platform will act as an inspiration for them. It will also allow us to work with them for that storytelling. Because if you look at a lot of the stories that we've put on the platform, they are essentially stories by curators, by experts in that area. So I think organizations have a huge opportunity and responsibility, small organizations, to really bring this fragmented nature of cultural information more out into the mainstream.
Absolutely. Amit, in your view, how can small businesses use art to grow, innovate, and make a mark in the market?
Well, I'm not an expert in the area of of giving this advice, but my 2 cents, so to speak, on this topic would be that I think smaller organizations, smaller businesses that are within this arts and culture ecosystem, or even outside it, can really look at art and culture as a way of connecting with their end consumer. looking at art and culture as a way of creating that emotional connection, that emotional bond. And I think, India as a country has been doing that for centuries. We are the experts in storytelling and creating those bonds. And I think picking and let's say researching from historical archives, from understanding what kind of connects will work with what kind of person in what kind of geography. That's really where arts and culture plays a big role, because arts and culture essentially it's an emotional reaction, and smaller organizations can really supplement that transactional conversation with an emotional conversation.
And tell me, how do you envision the intersection of digital technology and the arts evolving over the years?
Well, I think it's gone through a sea change in the last 10 years, since we started this. I remember when we started the initiative, there was such fascination of the ability to zoom into a high resolution image. Now that's kind of an afterthought, because we expect that images online of art or other type of photography will allow us to zoom in. So you see how we've gone from something that was like, oh wow, it's possible, to it's expected. And I think that's going to be the journey for the next 10 to 20 years. I think there are going to be a lot of opportunities to make it more interactive, to make it much more of a conversation rather than a passive experience. So rather than you kind of consuming content online around culture, you may be able to interact, participate in the conversation. There are amazing museums, I think, in India and abroad who have started to do this on various social networks, on YouTube. Curators are coming online to tell storytelling, to interact with their audiences. So I think there's going to be a huge increase in interaction and participation. But more importantly, I think there's an area that needs to be focused on much more, which is preservation and digitization. And I think this is an area that, let's say, is a little bit more, behind the scenes, but it is crucial that we preserve, document, and essentially curate these archives that are sitting in either people's houses or in organizations that don't have the resources to do that. So I think there's a huge digitization opportunity.
It was great chatting with you, Amit. Thank you so much for being on the show.
It was my pleasure, and thank you for having me. It was a wonderful experience.
And it's a wrap on this episode of IDFC First Bank Presents Leaders of Tomorrow Season 11. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.